How's everyone doing? For anyone who doesn't know, my name is Leigh Kimber. I'm a manager of planning and development. I work in Bay's area, planning, development, and design. And I recently took over managing the University GIS Services Initiative to not create, but continually update and maintain and improve the university's enterprise-wide online campus map. So I know you've all seen a presentation by Jen when the map was first rolled out and initially went live. We're now in year 2 of enhancements, which are going live in early May. That's sort of tentative, but in the next couple weeks, those enhancements will be going live. And I'm going to give you an overview of what's been improved in year 2 today. And then I'll also give you a brief preview of the work that we're going to be doing in year 3 that focuses more on utilities and sort of the back end of the campus map. So there were 2 key improvements that were made to the campus map this past year. One was to add off-campus facilities to the map. It used to only be the main campuses of Rutgers University Camden, Brunswick, and Newark. We've now added the owned and some leased off-campus facilities to the map. In addition, we have made the map web accessible, so it's now ADA compliant for those who are visually impaired. For anyone who doesn't know, the university is required to make all websites accessible to those who are visually impaired. A lot of websites are moving in that direction, and we've started that process with the campus map. So we've been working a lot with disability services as well as developers and IT to sort of understand those requirements, and then also to meet the requirements as well. So I'm going to actually escape out of this real quick and go through a live demo of some of the improvements. So here's basically a beta version of the map right now. It looks pretty much the same as the map we have today. One key difference is we added this show off-campus facilities button. So you can we figured the majority of users want to see it like this, but you do have the option to show the off-campus facilities and then they display. And they're displaying in this clustered fashion that kind of keeps the map from being cluttered and really gives you a good sense of a statewide view of some of the facilities. You can click on one of the clusters, and it'll zoom to the extent of that cluster and kind of break it out of it. And you can continue zooming in further until you get to basically the building level. And at that point, that show or hide off-campus facilities button disappears because it would just be a weird user experience if you zoom to that area and then there was no building there. So you can click on the building. This is the same as the way the map functions now, and you'll get some information about that building. You can still pan through the map and get to the contiguous campus. You can zoom back out. They recluster. And as I said, even if I hide them, when you zoom in, the buildings will still show up. In addition to finding them by clicking through, you can also search for them. Again, this is no different. It's really just that now we have them on the map. So you can click on Hutchison Memorial Forest, which will bring you to that location. But then you can also click onto individual facilities or buildings within that off-campus location to get information about those buildings. That's really it for the off-campus facilities. It's a pretty simple fix, but I think it really does improve some of the resources and the navigability of the map. I'm going to talk through some of the web accessibility improvements as well. So for anyone who doesn't know, people who are visually impaired, whether completely, so if they're completely blind, they navigate through websites using keyboard navigation, so they're obviously not using a mouse. They use different keystrokes and tabbing to navigate through a website, and then a screen reader is paired with that, and it basically reads the information to them so they can get information and make decisions. So I'm not going to turn on the screen reader because it can be a little overwhelming for people who aren't used to using one, but I will just show you the keyboard navigation, so I'm not going to be using the mouse any further. But basically, if you hit tab, the first thing that pops up is the skip to search, skip to map option. I'm going to do skip to map first, just to demonstrate. Okay, so now I'm in the map, and as I tab through, you can select one of these options. You can go backwards, I can select Camden. It zooms to that extent, shows the buildings, and then I can tab through the different key facilities on that campus. Hit enter again. An info drawer pops up. This is also a new feature. It used to be a pop-up window for anyone who isn't familiar. Basically, having an info drawer that's always in the same place at the bottom of the screen helps with the navigation with the keyboard. But I can navigate through that, get more information, go back and close it. And then once you close it, the next thing that happens if you hit tab again is that skip to search, skip to map pops up again. I'll go to skip to search this time, and I can search for, let's say, Dana Library. And just so you can see, I only typed in DAN. You can see all the different options come up. You can tab through all of them, the one that you want, press enter, brings up the building, and opens the info drawer on that. And then the last feature I'll just show you, if you go skip to search and go to the panel on the left side, you can tab through all these options. You can use spacebar to turn on different filters, such as the biking layer or any of the destination filters. You turn them on and off. So those are the enhancements for those who are visually impaired. We also made some changes to make the map more legible and discernible for people who are colorblind. And there are lots of different types of color blindness. I'm going to use a version that's kind of rare, but basically for people who are seeing entirely in monochrome, this is kind of the most extreme example. So this is what the map looked like in year one. For those who can see in color, you can tell what a building is, what a parking lot is, what a campus boundary is. And even if it is in grayscale, that information is still pretty readily discernible. The issue comes when you want to turn on any of those destination filters on the left-hand panel. So in this screen, 3 of those are on, and you really don't see an obvious difference. There's no way to tell whether they're on or off in the destination panel, and the color and the contrast of the buildings is not different enough when you apply a colorblind filter to really infer that something has changed about the map. So this is what that looks like in color. And again, in gray. In year 2, we added a few visual enhancements so that the changes in the map are much more obvious. So you can see we've now added halos around the destination buttons. So you can really tell it's very obvious that those 3 are turned on. And in addition, the shapes of the icons correspond to icons that are hovering over the key buildings on the map itself. And then lastly, we've adjusted the contrast between the building outline and the building fill. So it's very obvious that all those healthcare buildings, A, are turned on, and that they are all the same type of destination. And this is what it looks like in color. So that's pretty much it for the year 2 enhancements. There's a couple additional small additions we've made, but those are really the important ones. I'm going to quickly give an overview of year 3, what we're going to be working on between now and next June, and then I can take any questions. So in year 3, we're focusing on the back end of the map. We're going to be converting all of the utilities information that the university maintains from a CAD format into GIS. We've been working with Janice's area pretty closely on this effort, as well as some other potential users of the information, such as public safety, police, emergency services, OIT, etc. For those of you who may not be familiar, as I said, our information about utilities is right now maintained in CAD, and it's very complete, and it's very useful, and it's a great resource for the university. But CAD does have some limitations for maintaining and analyzing data, and we have determined that converting it into GIS will make it a much more robust resource for the university. So CAD is sort of a drawing software. GIS, while many of you might think of it as a really visual resource, you might have come to us to get a map in the past, and so you see points, lines, and polygons on a map. But that's really the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it, there is a ton of data baked into those visual features, and so that inherent quality of GIS to have database management is what makes it easy for us to maintain it and analyze it. Most of you are going to have no interaction with that. People will mainly be focused on the web map itself, but having the information in GIS will also make it much more easy to visualize, to share, and to glean some information about utilities from the online map. So this is what our utilities back-end portion of the map looks like right now. And I've got the fiber optic layer turned on. You can see the points and lines, but if you click on a feature, as I've done here, a pop-up window comes up, but there's not any information behind that line. It doesn't mean that the information doesn't exist in our CAD, but from doing a quick conversion from CAD to GIS, the information doesn't transfer over readily. So we've contracted with Applied Geographics to perform a much more sophisticated conversion and to build a database that's going to accept all of that information into it. So the goal is basically for it to look a little bit more like this, where you have unique symbology. Don't just know that the information is about fiber optics, but you might know what different line types are. You might know, you'll be able to tell very easily the difference between, let's say, a pass channel and a maintenance loop. So it'll be much more visually engaging and much easier to understand information about the map very quickly, or about utilities very quickly. A couple use cases that we've been throwing around that I think kind of make this more tangible. We've been talking with emergency services a lot about how they could use this to see fire hydrants very readily on a map, to give it a unique symbology that makes it very clear what's a fire hydrant and what's not, to zoom to that area in an emergency situation and understand where the nearest hydrant might be, to be able to click on it and to understand whether it's owned by the university or owned by another entity. All of that information will be readily available in a mobile format. Another example is if you're doing in utilities, doing a mark out, rather than printing a CAD drawing and bringing it out into the field, you could just bring an iPad, could quickly turn on not only the layer you're interested in, but other layers to see what other utilities might be underground in that area all at once. So it's a much more dynamic and user-friendly way of accessing that information. And then in addition to the web enhancements and getting the GIS data in a more manageable format, there's a couple of additional deliverables we're getting as part of this project that we're getting in order to complete it that some of you might be interested in. So we are collecting new ortho imagery for all of the 3 campuses, so all of Newark, Camden, and New Brunswick, and the surrounding areas. It's going to be really high resolution and crisp, and it will have building lean eliminated. So some lower quality ortho imagery would look like the one on the left where the building is shown lean. We're going to have really good imagery that's going to show all buildings as if we're looking directly down at them. So I think that'll be a good resource for the whole university. And then we're getting a lot of data that's going to be gleaned from these images, not only superficial utilities data like manholes and lights, but since they're collecting it anyway, I would also ask them to get updated roads layers, buildings, parking lots. So all of that information that you see on the map now will be much more geopositionally accurate, which is just best practice for our data. So that's really it. I can take any questions now if you want. You can also always email us at rumaps@ipo.rutgers.edu or stop at my desk if you have specific questions.
Thank you. So Liz, Richard, all yours.
So for those of you who haven't met Rich Whittaker, who's part of my group in strategic communications, he joined us just under a year ago. And he's,
10 months.
yes, he's counting. And he's really refined our divisional look. Those of you who get the newsletter, and you should all be getting the newsletter, see it's really become a more magazine type look to it, and it's something we're very proud of. He's branding April's group right now, Employee Services, doing a beautiful job of that, and also we just completed a beautiful brochure for the golf course. So he's really giving us a professional look, and because of the tagline, what's our new tagline, Rich? Supporting today, envisioning tomorrow.
That's right.
And we have to redo the content guide, and we will be issuing that shortly, as Tony said. And so Rich is going to review some of the finer points of that and marketing and communications. And I encourage everybody in this room to really come to us for your communications needs, because we have a true professional with Rich, and we have the videography skills with Paul, photography, videography, what's on John, and we can really services division at a very high level. Take it away.
All right, great. So what I thought would be a great thing to start with is kind of talk about why this is important, why it's important that we brand ip&o, and why it's important that we sort of follow the guidelines. So when I think of branding, I think of it as kind of like a bucket. Instead of this bucket holding water, it kind of holds all of the experiences that we have with a company or a group of people or a service. And every time we interact with something, whether or not that interaction is a good one or a bad one, it goes into this bucket. So what happens if we don't maintain the integrity of that bucket? The associations that people have with us, with our division, can be diminished. Our work doesn't build that brand equity that can become so valuable for us. Or worst case scenario, maybe some of the not best associations can become attributed to us because we haven't built that relationship or that brand space. So how do we do it? So how do we maintain it? Well, visuals are key. We all have strong visceral reactions to what we see. We don't have to taste it. First I want to talk, the big one is always the experiences themselves, right? The great work, the long hours of dedication, you name it. Or otherwise, we can make the bucket look as good as possible, but the bucket is still somewhat empty. So I've talked about the why, but now I want to talk a little bit about the how. We use our visual identity in a very similar way. We build and we strengthen that association between our division's identity and the positive experiences that we bring to the community. By using the ip&o division logo, by using our new tagline, which I'll get to in just a second, and using it in a consistent way, we build a strong connection between those two entities. Okay, so this is so now I want to get to the actual new content guide. The theme of the guide is our journey towards more efficient brand communications. And I thought that the theme was fitting for ip&o because of our scope and our reach. So here the waypoints represent the three sections of the document that I want to talk about: branding the division, refining the message, and using signatures and fonts. Okay, so first our divisional tagline. Our communications group was tasked with developing the new ip&o tagline. And because our division is so diverse and we do so many different things, boiling it down to one or two lines was pretty hard to do, as you can imagine. So we focused on what the common threads are, so the common themes. And the two things that we really harped on was the fact that our 24/7, 365 support across all campuses, and also our visionary outlook. So the new tagline, supporting today, visioning tomorrow, I think supports that very strongly. And as with all of our other branding elements, it's important that we use it in an appropriate way. Again, to maintain the integrity of that bucket, the integrity of that communication. I'll get back to usage in a minute. I just wanted to go over some of the other additions to the guide. I wanted to make this guide a little bit more than just sort of a rule book. So I wanted to add some practical guidance to it beyond, how to use fonts and brand elements. So just like baseball, graphic design and web design has moved towards using more analytics. We even know how people read pages. We're here, for example, here you're looking at a heat map that people have put together using eye movement software. What people tend to do is read a document along the left margin until they find something interesting, and then only then will they scan over to the right and start to actually read the content. So this gives us an edge in sort of how we design things and how we lay things out. And for websites, we typically use a Z pattern, where you have the menu along the top, coming across you see the content centered in the center, and on the bottom, usually in the footer, we have another menu system that, again, leverages that pattern. So the guidelines also will give you a new comprehensive ability to pick the appropriate colors. We're in lockstep with Rutgers University branding in terms of colors that are appropriate. What tends to happen is people will take a document from the web, grab a color from that, and the color integrity starts to degrade over many iterations of that. So here you can reference this to use the actual value so that everything sort of maintains that consistent look. And I'd also want to talk about some critical questions. Some of these things that we should think about when we're designing the materials that we put out. Number one, who is the audience and what's important to them? What are they interested in? Is it a technical document where we can speak about it a little bit more in depth, or is it more of an overview document where we just want to lay things out in a way that everybody, that a layman would understand? What are we asking them to do? Is there a clear call to action? Again, here's where we've used like that F pattern and Z pattern to put that call of action in a place where they're more likely to look at it, understand what's being asked of them, and more likely to convert or to actually do that. And third, are we making it as easy as possible for them to do it? Essentially, this goes back to the Z patterns and things like that again. Do you know what we're asking for you to do? When you click on the button, does the website work? Pretty self-explanatory. And again, if you reach out, we're here to help you. The guideline will actually lay out usage and all of those issues. The actual files will be in PNG format, which will be available on the intranet. So you'll be able to download those and just put them into your document, usually at the bottom.
So you're not allowed to take that tagline and put it into any font. Rich has created
That's
the
right.
font. Yeah, those things will be downloadable, just like the University of Communications and Marketing has a download zone for different, the shield and the spirit mark and the rubber signature and all.
Right, we're treating the tagline very much similar to how we treat a logo. So you wouldn't type in the Rutgers Institution of Planning and Operations logo into Word, for example. You would have that file that you would use. So those files will be readily available, and you can put it into the footer of the document. There's two versions of the tagline, which I didn't put on here, and I should have. One of them is a single line tagline, and one of them is a double line tagline. Essentially, the double line tagline would be used when it's left aligned, and the single line tagline would be when it's centered in the document.
And we'll have examples of that in the content guide.
That's right.
Now, for those two groups that have their own signature, University Facilities and University of Public Safety, you still must use the divisional identifier at the bottom of a page if you're issuing a flyer or some document. Doesn't have to be on everything, but documents that require that. Rutgers Division of Institutional Planning and Operation, because the ip&o signature does not appear alongside your signature and should not appear. You have your own signatures, but we also want to identify the division. Under that, you may place supporting today, envisioning tomorrow. And we will have that in the content guide as well.
Along with some spacing guidelines as far as how far apart it has to be from other elements, things like that.
Any questions? Rich, good?
So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Show us what we know.
25. So he paints a dismal picture. So the good news is 75% of the ip&o employees belong to unions that have settled. So that's a good point. A big one for the university was the AAUP, AFT, and they had settled a couple of weeks ago, so we put another one off the list with that. URA negotiations are going on right now, so I leave here, I'll be going over there. They started at 9 o'clock this morning. We have dates scheduled through the end of May with them. So far, we're hoping that they will settle by the end of the fiscal year. We are encouraged that the AAUP has settled, and we're hoping that they will follow that lead. So we also have the CWA outstanding. We had call tomorrow regarding the FOP. A good sign was that on March 29th, 888-1761, they settled. That became ratified. So they're a very large portion of our population, about 1,700 of our employees belong to those unions.
and there are some significant changes to note. So it's still being worked on by the Office of Labor Relations, but as soon as there is a true comparison between the old and the new, I'll send that out to you. If you have any questions, because this is ratified in effect, if you have any questions on 888 or 1761, you can certainly call the office, stop in, and we can help guide you with that. Just some of the basic highlights are the FMLA time is going to be used concurrent with sick time. There were some changes to the shift diff pay, some meal allowance, and some clothing allowances. So since that did take effect on March 29th, we do owe a little residual back pay for that, and that will be reflected in the May 3rd paycheck if anyone asks you about that. That's basically it for the unions. If I could just interject a couple of other things. Erin isn't here, but Nikia and Erin had recently sent down an email message about some Chronos training that's going on. We encourage you to sign up for that training. Everyone should go for that. That really does affect how we operate with the labor unions because there are different notifications that need to be made. I know I've met with many of your departments and many of you on an individual basis. If people are out sick 3 or more days, we need to send them a notification. So timely updating of Chronos is very important. Additionally, if there are more questions on the New Jersey Earned Sick Leave Act, let me know. You guys have been very good coming to the office, calling with your questions. So a lot has been clarified. So again, not to take up everyone's time here, but if you have more questions on that, certainly let us know. The URA AFT evaluations were due to my office on April 15th. We have 203 members in the URA AFT, and I'm still missing 102 evaluations. So if those are from your groups, please let my office know when we can be expecting them. If you need assistance with them, again, we're here to help you. And as I did just mention, I've met with many of you on an individual basis and have presented at your own staff meetings, and I think that's been very helpful because the types of questions that we had been inundated with, like regarding the Earned Sick Leave Act, they really slowed down, and that's a big thank you to all of you for pushing the information that we talk about at this meeting, cascading it out to your staff. So, are there any questions that I can answer on the labor front, any HR issues?
April, we have I have a few employees who are in HPAE union, and it's really a RBHS union that is heavily slanted to healthcare side. But we have a group of my employees that are there. And do you have an update on those negotiations? I don't think they're settled yet, but rumors are they're getting close, and my staff are starting to ask me questions.
Yeah, they're getting close. I don't have an update on that. And Tony, did you have anything further about the HPA?
No, I mean, they're all in
Right.
at that point that the expectation is hopefully.
Right.
There's not a big hang up. I mean, I think they're, let me just,
Yeah.
so it's,
The question that I get from my staff comes down to money. And their concern is if the negotiations go beyond the fiscal year, because they've been without a contract for an X period of time, is it safe to say, is it reasonable to assume that any negotiated pay increases would be retroactive to the start of the previous contract?
no,
Okay.
no, that is not safe to assume.
Okay.
That's what's on the table, or has been on the table, and worked towards, but I will tell you that I think well, you can't make that assumption. It could be that the negotiating team at some point might say, you know, it's not going to be retroactive, it's going to be here. I don't know, that goes back and forth, but certainly not a safe assumption. That I wouldn't make the assumption.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? All right, well, thank you everyone, and you know, we're just right across the hall. We have an office in Newark at 15 Washington, and we have an office in Camden now as well. So you can reach us all the same way with the one mailbox, ES_requests at ip&o.rutgers.edu, or again, stop by or send me an email. Vacation time. Vacation time, yes.
getting to the end of the calendar, fiscal year.
To the end of the fiscal
So
year.
you all know the drill, right? We don't need to remind anybody, but you may need to remind your people about what the deal is with vacation time.
So you can carry forward 1 year worth of vacation. Everything else you need to use it or lose it. I did see in the memo that you can donate it if you wanted to donate it to Compassion Time. So you have that option. So make sure as we're getting towards the end of the year that everybody's not out the whole month of June to use their time. You still have a little time to talk to your staff and have it staggered so operations can go semi-normal basis.
And for those that have an issue remembering this every year, PHAL doesn't carry over. So that's got to be used up.
And your earned sick leave, I have a question for you guys. Is it an extra 40 hours that everybody gets?
No.
No. Very good, thank you. It's 40 hours already included in your